Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all on behalf of the Royal Academy of Engineering and our supporting organisations that you can read on the screen behind me. It's actually not very often that you can say genuinely in Edinburgh in March a very warm welcome. But we have been blessed with exceptional weather today. The Meadows was full of sunbathers. Ridiculous. It must be a record for March. And let's hope that the exceptional weather helps us engage in debate in a positive frame of mind, and it casts some warmth and light on the issues this evening. We do have some housekeeping matters, however, before I get down to the formal introductions. Being an engineering organisation, we pay full attention to safety. We haven't been advised that there are any fire alarms planned for this evening, so if it does go off, then it's a real situation. And there are two exits from the lecture theatre, over there where most of you came in, and also another one behind the little white running man on the green background. And I'll be the next running man on a blue background. You could just follow me if you wish. So that's the way. It takes you to a place of safety. Keep following the exit signs, and it will take you out. Could I also ask you to take a few seconds to switch off any mobile electronic devices that you may have in your pockets, or at least those that are likely to make an unwelcome noise? We are, however, encouraging, as long as they're in silent mode, tweeting. In fact, I'm told that we're encouraging tweeting, and those of you who know about these things will see a Twitter with a hashtag at the bottom of the screen as well. So if you do use that, if you do decide you want to tweet, then it's helpful to get all of the contributions gathered together under that hashtag. The Royal Academy of Engineering is very pleased to be organising its first event in Scotland in recent years, and it's a reminder that fellows associated with the Royal Academy of Engineering come from all parts, nations and regions of the UK and some beyond as well. So it is a broad church of engineering expertise that's represented, especially when we add on the supporting organisations. And as you're aware, the meeting will take the format of an Oxford Union-style debate, perhaps a little bit better behaved than a typical Oxford Union-style debate, certainly better behaved than debates in the House of Commons. And I'll exclude any observations on Holyrood debates in light of present company. Now, I will introduce our speakers, or debaters, later on to debate the motion that this House believes that Scotland's energy industry will be the envy of the world. But before I do, can I say how delighted we are that we have Fergus Ewing, MSP, Minister in Scotland for Energy, Enterprise and Tourism, and the Minister has agreed to make a few introductory remarks, Minister. And I have told the Minister that something I should tell all of you, that the event is being recorded for a radio programme tomorrow, and the agreement is it's reported under Chatham House rules, so journalists present are not permitted to attribute without your express permission. But Minister would be very, very grateful to hear from you with your introductory remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Now, Scotland is blessed in abundance with three of the most valuable, if not the most valuable, liquids in the world, namely oil, water, and whisky. And I guess the motion that we're debating tonight, this House believes that Scotland's energy industry will be the envy of the world, could just about encompass all three, if you think about it. But I'll confine myself with the first two, because I believe that were I speaking in the debate, which I've just realised I'm not, I would be urging you strongly to support the motion, because we do wish to be the envy of the world. Indeed, if I have one complaint, it is that in some respects, perhaps we already are the envy of the world. We are leading the way, are we not, in oil and gas, because we pioneered subsea oil and gas exploration. And I was at a manufacturing conference today where we heard the terrific success of FMC Technologies, based in Scotland, and voted the best oil company in the world. That brilliance has been achieved largely by the influence that engineers have played in that industry. It is the envy of the world, surely, for such a small country to be at the forefront of the oil and gas sector throughout the world, which has delivered so many of the benefits of society, is truly great. But I suspect that what we want to focus on tonight is renewable energy, and therefore I will. And I'm the chap in the SNP that occasionally quotes Winston Churchill, not something my colleagues are prone to do so far as I've noticed. And what Winston Churchill said was that when it comes to energy supply, variety and variety alone is the key. Because one needs a balanced supply, one needs baseload, one needs certainty, one needs affordability, security of supply. These are basics. And anyone who has read our EGPS, our Electricity Generation Policy Statement, which we issued a few weeks ago, will see that the myths that one sometimes read in what is loosely described in this country as newspapers, that this government relies solely on wind power to keep the lights on, has not read our EGPS or indeed any statement from our renewable roadmap or anything else, because there does need to be, and there will need to be, for the foreseeable future, and certainly in the transition to low-carbon economy, a balanced match of energy supply. I met today with Scottish Power, and they showed me that they're planning to increase to 6.6 gigawatts the capacity to export to England, approved by Ofgem. Why is that? Because England needs Scotland's renewable energy supply. 6.6 gigawatts, incidentally, when not so long ago it was under 1 gigawatt. Now, that's Ofgem approved, it's National Grid approved, it's DEC approved. All of us agree that the journey we're embarked on in Scotland to massively increase our renewable energy generation capacity is the right one. I would submit to you that we have seen in Scotland in the last short period a number of achievements which are milestones in success to achieving our renewable targets, and these are in no particular order. The establishment of the Green Investment Bank in Edinburgh, a campaign devoid of politics, and my colleagues in different parties are here today. I see Mary Scanlon, Liam MacArthur, Rhoda Grant in Labour, Patrick Harvey in Green. We've all united in a non-political way, and we won. And we won on the merits, the Green Investment Bank for Edinburgh. What a terrific advantage. Just last Friday, Gamesa chose Leith over Hartlepool, 800 jobs and 150 million euros in investment. That may just be the start, I suspect, with Gamesa. A campaign won on the merits, 3 years of hard work by excellent team in Scottish Enterprise, the SDI, and backed up with support from academia, who I see are here in abundance this evening. Gaia Wind winning the accolade of the best farm-scale turbine in the world recently in a competition in California. Samsung Industries, £100 million investment in metal, £7 billion of investment in the grid in Scotland, fast-tracked. We're ahead of England because the National Grid didn't get that fast-tracking. £7 billion. I speak to companies all the time that have switched from construction into building the new grid that we will need for Scotland to deliver our potential to the urban areas. We've seen £750 of renewable investment over the last 12 months in Scotland. Global Energy going ahead now and establishing last week its Training Skills Academy. Aquamarine Power. Technip opening its new Aberdeen centre. Alstom acquiring a stake in AWS Ocean Energy in my own constituency. Mitsubishi planning to invest £100 million. Hammerfest Strom. All over Scotland, I mention these companies because, you see, if you vote against the motion tonight, what you're saying, and of course I'm not taking part in the debate, you understand. What you're saying is that SSE, Gamesa, Mitsubishi, Samsung, Ofgem, DEC, the National Grid, Scottish Renewables, the Scottish Government, they're all wrong. They're all idiots. That's what you're saying. Now, do you think that that is true? It's possible. Now, of course, there are sceptics. Of course there are sceptics. There are sceptics about climate change. I hosted a dinner for Bjorn Lomborg some years ago. I've read his book. I've read parts of Mr. Constable's book. I haven't quite finished it yet. I'm sure I'll get round to it. There are skeptics, but I'll tell you something. I've got a 3-year-old daughter, so I'm kind of skeptical about the skeptics. Are we sure they're going to be right? Because if we're not, then what sort of world will we bequeath to my daughter's daughter or granddaughter if those majority of scientists who predict that global warming is a serious challenge facing this world are correct? Even if they're only slightly correct, then what sort of world are we going to bequeath to my daughter's granddaughter? I'm skeptical about the skeptics, I have to say about that. And of course, we're talking about harnessing the renewable potential of a country which has, of course, appalling wind and rain and waves and weather. We thought this was terrible until recently we realised it was a massive economic opportunity. But whether it is or whether it's not, it remains a fact that a barrel of oil costs $125 and a barrel of air will cost $0. And once, with the success of engineers, we harness the deliverable challenge over storage, as we will overcome. It will happen, because far more difficult challenges have been overcome. Then we will see those costs coming down. Of course there are challenges. The investor challenge, the investment challenge, the technical challenge, the engineering challenge. These are all challenges. We are working with the institutes of chartered engineers, of mechanical engineers. They have been involved in discussion with us on a Chatham House basis with our EGPS. We've consulted and we work with business all the time. We have a credible, deliverable policy for Scotland, and we have a policy that I commend to you as one which will make Scotland the envy of the world. And may I finish off by saying that, as Barack Obama said, the country that creates new industry with a new form of energy will be the country that leads the world economy. Scotland will be that country.
Oh, thank you very much indeed, Minister. And, those speaking against the motion may feel that they're a man down already, actually, but we knew what we were getting into. So I do hope that we from now on take the issue with entire fairness and impartiality and consider the debaters and the merits of their case. In fact, I think it was Disraeli who once said that ignorance never solved an issue. And tonight, the challenge and the task for our debaters is to inform us, present their case such that ignorance is dispelled and the light of certainty is cast benignly on us all. Well, that's the challenge anyway. And we have assembled a formidable team to address that challenge. And let me introduce the 4 debaters. First, to speak for the motion, Dr. Simon Harrison, energy expert, visiting professor at the University of Southampton. Simon's a director with Mott MacDonald, responsible for the firm's energy business worldwide, and he's a council member of the Parliamentary Group for Energy Studies and vice president of the Institution of Engineering and Technology. Welcome, Simon. And speaking and leading against the motion, we have on my left Dame Sue Eon, visiting professor at Imperial College London. Sue chaired the Energy Policy Subgroup of the Royal Academy of Engineering between 2007 and 2010 and is a member of the UK Council for Science and Technology 2004 to 2007. Simon will be supported by Professor Stuart Hazeldine on my extreme right, Scottish Power Professor of Carbon Capture and Storage at the University of Edinburgh. He was Technical Advisor to the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee on Carbon Capture and Storage in 2006 and is a member of the Science Advisory Committee to DEC, the Chief Scientific Advisor to DEC. And supporting Sue is, on my far left, John Constable, Director of the Renewable Energy Foundation. The Minister has already given a plug for his book this evening. And the Renewable Energy Foundation is an independent UK charity that publishes data and analysis on the energy sector. And John's been working on energy policy since 2004 and is author of the book, The Green Mirage, why the low-carbon economy may be further off than we think. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree that we do have a formidable array of knowledge and erudition. Could I ask you to thank our debaters in anticipation? Our debaters. Now, a reminder to our speakers. Timings will be rigidly enforced to ensure absolute impartiality and fairness. A digital clock has been placed prominently at the lectern before you when you get up there. And I will firmly but politely give a gentle tap of the gavel at the end of 5 minutes exactly, but you will be counted down towards the 5 minutes, so you get fair notice of that happening. And after the gavel is heard, that's the time to, I'm afraid, return to your seat. So, with that preamble, could I ask our first speaker to rise and speak on behalf of the motion, Simon Harrison. The motion being, this House believes that Scotland's energy industry will be the envy of the world. Simon.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The last time I addressed such a large audience, or performed in front of such a large audience in this city, was when I was a teenager on the Festival Fringe. We won an award for that one, so I'm hopeful. So, the envy of the world. Well, I think Scotland is in a Goldilocks position. It's big enough to have scale. It's small enough to have a community that has pulled together around this challenging goal, and so therefore it's just right. And that's unusual. Envy of the world. Let's disaggregate that and energy industry and really understand what the motion means. An energy industry is not just about energy policy and how you heat and light homes and things. It's about wealth creation, it's about jobs, it's about exports, it's about innovation. That's what we're talking about tonight. We're not talking about whether you build wind farms or gas-fired power stations or whatever. So, envy of the world, what does that mean? Well, I'd like to propose that means punching above its weight consistently and across and robust to a wide range of scenarios. And important to note, the motion isn't time-bound. So we're not saying when we'll be the envy of the world, we'll just say we will be. It might take a little longer than we think. So what's the world looking at now? Well, firstly, it's all about exploiting fossil fuel resources that are scarce and doing it sustainably. It's about renewable energy. It's about new nuclear. It's about smart grids and smart systems, about using less energy. So where is Scotland in that landscape? It has leading expertise in mature oil and gas, as has been said. It's Europe's major carbon sink resource and has the expertise needed to develop it. There's a lot of academic expertise here around carbon capture. There's a world-class offshore wind and marine renewables capability and an emerging industry base to support it. There is also a strong nuclear industry here already, real world-class manufacturers. There's some leading smart grid activity, for example, the Nines project. Big power utilities who can deliver serious capital projects, academic programmes, and the ability to deliver a substantial and distinctive Scottish programme, because actually the bits that Scotland is less keen on for economic benefit can be outsourced to England. That's actually quite handy. So overall, Scotland's got this fantastic endowment. It's bought options in certain areas. I think it's fallen into other areas, a little bit by mistake, but nonetheless is there, and can find its way to being the envy of the world. Well, how? What does it need? Political support and engagement is one thing. Connections between academia, business startups, established industry, government, real projects that can nurture and new technologies, a can-do mindset, and community engagement. And I think it does have most of those things already and is growing the pieces that are missing. Let's focus on a few of them, on the politics. I noticed from outside Scotland how tight-knit the community is here, how well engaged the politicians are with everything else, how thoughtful of industry they already are. There's industrial muscle here. There are well-capitalised utilities who can make big capital investments and create a domestic base from which exports can grow. There is a manufacturing industry already established, familiar with working around the world. There are thriving SMEs, and there's a coherent voice through bodies such as the Industrial and Power Association. So there's some real strength there. There are real projects we've already heard across renewables, CCS emerging, intellectual capital already under heavy development. There is already a strong nuclear base. So in an uncertain world, whichever way things go, Scotland's got it covered. And so from the point of view of industry and wealth and prosperity and employment and exports, the bases are there. And if we don't go down one technology route, it doesn't matter particularly. Scotland's got the options to cover others. So if I just conclude, please remember this is about energy industry, of which energy policy is only a part. So this is about industrial capacity. There's a diverse portfolio of comparative advantage being systematically built. Scotland has scale to do big things, but is small enough to pull together as a community. And also energy policy is being deftly manipulated by the Scottish Government, I think, to build comparative advantage for Scotland. And one example of that, perhaps accidentally, is not building nuclear here actually allows everybody else to focus around other technologies, while nuclear can still be supported by the Scottish existing industrial capacity. Thank you very much indeed.
I think you had about 1 second to spare there, Simon. I was itching to bash the gavel. Well done. And our first speaker, principal speaker, against the motion is Dame Sue Eon. Dame Sue.
Thank you very much indeed, and definitely a man or woman down, I feel. But to have a world-beating successful energy industry, you have to have a credible energy policy around which to build it. And I would put to you that Scottish energy policy doesn't have sufficient basis in engineering or financial reality. Neither can it be seen in isolation from the overall UK, so the investment that is required to make the energy industry successful won't materialise in the way people think. Energy prices are rising, power outages prospects growing. Renewable energy source investment still progressing very slowly, mainly because investors aren't daft. They understand risks, and even with the currently offered massive subsidies, the projects are not attractive enough to be progressing as fast as they should. It's parallel to some extent in Germany, where there's a growing worry now about deindustrialisation. Energy supply and cost is now the top risk in Germany for location of new business and existing business. 5,000 jobs in the steel industry in one company alone now at risk because of an irresponsible energy policy pursued in Düsseldorf and Berlin. Production of whisky in Scotland, major industry mentioned by the Minister, but it's very energy intensive. Will it be impaired as a result of an energy policy based on flawed economics and an unrealistic aspiration? Will energy-intensive industries generally shy away from investment in Scotland? Because this issue isn't just about Scotland's position in the energy industry, it's about Scotland's position as an industrial power, where prices are squeezing companies to the point where they go elsewhere or consider Scotland an attractive place for new investment. Scotland can currently export 3 gigawatts south of the border. A significant proportion of this, courtesy of the 2 reliable low-carbon nuclear energy stations at Torness and Hunterston. In winter, these stations are absolutely essential for Scotland because they supply 49% of the electricity that Scotland needs. So when Hunterston and Torness close, the lights at Edinburgh and Glasgow could go out unless gas-fired carbon-emitting stations are built in short order to plug the gap. These stations, by the way, won't be supplied by Scottish companies, but rather by the likes of the overseas operations of Siemens and ABB. So Scottish attitude to nuclear energy is kind of schizophrenic, because the government is happy to support life extension of the existing units, but not to support the building of new units. It's like saying, we're happy to agree and support repair of our ancient customised Ford Cortina, which is creaking at the seams, there's no airbags, old brake systems, and is costly in fuel terms, rather than buy a brand new, internationally available, high-standard, state-of-the-art and cheaper-to-run car. So it's kind of bizarre. England and Wales are actually poised to take advantage of the inward investment in the UK for the new stations that are being built at Hinkley Point and Wilfer, as key engineering companies in England and Wales become part of the global supply chain. What about the opportunity in construction, heavy engineering and manufacturing that will actually be lost by Scotland? That's just the nuclear part of the landscape. Let's look at the rest. The oil and gas sector. Scotland has indeed led the world. It's been excellent. and a real beacon and an example of growth of a successful industry of many years' duration. But regrettably, it's only going one way, and that's downhill, as our reserves decline and the companies involved in them migrate overseas to other parts of the world to explore the oil and gas reserves there. Clean coal. Here, Scotland could have been the place where CCS was indeed demonstrated and led the world. But right now, not with the on-off, risk-averse current penny-pinching policy stalling Longannet and Peterhead. So the UK, never mind about Scotland, is going to miss the boat as far as CCS is concerned, and the opportunity, because this would have been a massive global export opportunity as the technology is developed and taken forward by others. What about the marine sector? High hopes, even if progress was glacial. Marine current turbines, Bristol-based, now taken over by Siemens, who've already declared they're going to offshore the component manufacture and just assemble in Britain, not necessarily Scotland. Polaris, the wave technology, is still struggling to get any really meaningful investment to take it forward. So Scottish politicians really banking on wind. Are they completely ignorant of the experience of other countries like Denmark, sustained by the Swedish nuclear power stations and the Nordic hydro grid, only exporting the wind resource at times of plenty, or Spain, where the government has stopped the subsidies? We've pretty much saturated all the onshore farms, so not much industry growth there. And as for offshore, massive engineering risks and challenges. How are we going to persuade investors it's worth the project risk? How are we going to get them to pay for the backup fossil stations? Yes, a company cited its manufacturing base in Neath, but look what happened to Vestas in the Isle of Wight. Not enough business, so the company folded, at least its operations in the Isle of Wight. So please tell me how this little lot adds up to Scottish energy industry being the envy of the world. Otherwise, cast your vote against the motion.
Well, sneakily, I gave Sue 10 extra seconds there, I'll confess, to make up for the Minister's contribution. Now, seconding the motion, we have Stuart Hazeldine. Stuart.
Don't start the clock here. Got there, yeah. Okay, so we've heard from Sue about how Scotland's a basket case, absolutely no hoper. But all that was really about electricity generation in the here and now. I'll just want to remind us, of course, that Scotland's already been the energy and been the envy of the world twice with its coal industry, the foundation of the Industrial Revolution, and then secondly, reinventing itself in the 1970s with the oil and gas industry, and Aberdeen is the second oil capital of the world after Houston. That is something we have, and we can build on that. And that is why Scotland is moving forward into offshore industries, whether that's carbon capture and storage or whether that's renewables. That's a sensible thing to do to build on our advantage. All of this, of course, is predicated about why we're doing this. We're not doing this to have debates. We're not doing this to have meaningless targets or timelines. This is because planetary change is real, current, and actually happening now. The past 3 days have been record-breaking heat waves in Scotland. That's just weather, but there is a long-term secular trend of increasing temperature, and there is a long-term trend of ocean acidification, which is much more insidious and much more scary. The world ocean, because of carbon dioxide from fossil fuel, is already 30% more acid than it's been in the past 20 million years. I don't hear anything from Sue about how she proposes to tackle those problems. What is Scotland doing about it? Scotland talked about that. Scotland considered that. Scotland passed a climate change bill in 2009. We have a world-leading climate change target for 42% carbon reduction by 2020. We're on track for doing that. How are we going to do that? Yes, there is an energy policy. A policy is not just a target. A policy is a concerted series of actions in consideration with how that fits into the entire economy, how that impacts on other parts of the economy, and how that impacts on people. An energy policy needs to address energy efficiency, it needs to address heat use, it needs to generate electricity generation, about which most hot air is discussed, and it needs to tackle transportation. What Scotland has already done is set a target to improve efficiency of energy use by 12%. Scotland has already improved that by 9%. Scotland has set a target to produce 11% of heat from renewable sources by 2020. It's already producing 2.5% of heat from renewable sources. Scotland has set a target for decarbonising its transport by 10%. That's already achieved by adding in bioadditives into existing petrol and diesel. And Scotland has set a target, an aspirational target of 100% of the power used, electrical power used in Scotland by 2020. Scotland's already producing 31% of its electricity from renewable sources. All these are progress well on the way, and that trajectory can meet all those targets by 2020 in the third energy revolution in Scotland. After coal, after oil, we're moving into the low-carbon economy, and the energy industry is part of that low-carbon economy. So we're going to focus a lot on electricity probably, so let's just look at what's happening. You start from where you can start. There's no point in doing the very, very difficult things first, so wind power is a pretty sensible place to start. Carbon capture and storage, wave and tide will follow on from that. So with wind power already, Scotland already operates 4.4 gigawatts of wind power. There's another 1.1 gigawatts in construction. There's another 2 gigawatts consented. There's another 4.5 in planning. Gigawatts in planning. There's about another 12 or 14 gigawatts in evaluation. Something needs to go badly wrong to miss the target. Okay? If everything continues on that trajectory, that something needs to change, the renewable subsidies need to be withdrawn, or some radical departure needs to happen to miss this target. And as well as that, there's community benefit. Half a gigawatt, 500 megawatts of that are community-owned, 225 million of money goes into dispersed communities all around Scotland. This is not a centralised multinational export operation taking the wealth out of the country. This is wealth into the country. We heard today, of course, from Scottish Renewables that there are now about 11,150 jobs, real jobs and supply chain, direct supply chain jobs in the renewables industry. That has created real jobs with real money for real people dispersed around Scotland, and there are more support jobs as well as those 11,500 jobs. And of course, 750 of those jobs are in research and development, whether that's in universities or companies, because the lesson from any industry is you have to locate the research and development in your country, as well as the manufacturing, as well as using the power. Scotland joins up on all those sectors. In addition to that, we've heard about carbon capture and storage. We're on track. We can't control what DEC does, but last week we heard a new investor in Scotland. With luck, we could have 800 megawatts of carbon capture and storage operating by 2018 in Scotland. I think we're well on the way to that energy revolution.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. And last but certainly not least, speaking against the motion, seconding that, is John Constable. John.
Thank you very much. We talk of energy carelessly as if it's part of the economy, but it is much more important than that. For what is economic activity if it's not work? And to do work, of course, as any physicist will tell you, you need energy. Energy is more than part of the economy. It's the animating spirit of the economy. It is the economy. So an increase in the cost and the price of this prince amongst primary inputs will have effects of more than ordinary consequence. Yet very large increases in the consumer cost of electricity, one of the most important energy carriers, not least for industry, are precisely what policy currently entails. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that the UK overall meets the EU Renewables Directive. That would require upwards of 30% of electricity consumed in the UK to be from renewable sources, about 100 terawatt-hours, the vast bulk of it requiring subsidy at an average of between £50 and £100 a megawatt-hour. So assuming the plant mix anticipated by DEC, much of it wind, much of it here in Scotland, the target will require about £8 billion annually in subsidy for the duration of the programme. But that isn't the end of the cost story. Wind power imposes significant and still poorly understood system costs. Colin Gibson, former Power Networks Director of National Grid and well known to many of you, has estimated that the costs providing short-term reserve, funding grid expansion and securing supply on windless days will add significantly to the cost from the consumer's perspective. Mr. Gibson's median figures would give a cost of $5 billion a year in 2020. Let's say it's only half that. Let's say it's $2 billion. That's still, together with the subsidy, a $10 billion premium a year in 2020. It's about nudging up towards 1% of UK GDP. This is a very large barnacle on the hull of the wider economy. That extra cost can only look reasonable if global conventional energy prices, and gas in particular, become equally expensive or more so. Or to put it another way, We are already locked into much higher electricity costs, regardless of whether conventional energy prices rise or not. We will consequently have lost a great deal of economic flexibility. If there is low-cost clean energy in 2020 and after, cheap nuclear, cheap CCS, cheaper renewables, we won't be able to take full advantage of it because we will have already chosen and built higher-cost renewables. So the UK's policy is actually a wager on the price of conventional energy and other alternatives to current renewables in 10 years' time. But it is a wager in which government itself seems to have no confidence, because if they did, it would be simpler and more economically efficient to allow the manifest prospect of rising prices to drive adoption, rather than using notoriously inefficient and innovation-suppressing subsidies and mandates to force premature deployment to meet arbitrary targets. Would Scotland be better off out of this mess? Perhaps, but only if the policy direction is changed radically. Consider the current situation. Scotland's on track to have roughly 8 gigawatts, rather more perhaps, in 2020. That would require a subsidy of £50 a megawatt hour, totalling £2 billion a year or more, for 20 years. That would be a very heavy burden on the Scottish consumer base, probably an insupportable burden, and it would only be tolerable if electricity could be traded to advantage over the interconnectors with England, in effect getting the English and Welsh consumer to subsidise Scottish wind power. But the English and Welsh may not want or be able to buy expensive Scottish renewable electricity. They may have to seek and find other options, and they would have every incentive to do so. And as far as global example goes, that Scottish wind fleet would be abating emissions at a subsidy cost alone of around £90 per tonne of CO2, which is not an economically compelling example to the developing world. Well, we're here to debate the proposition that Scotland's energy industry will be the envy of the world. On the basis of current policies, that is vanishingly unlikely to be true, whether Scotland is within or out with the United Kingdom. But there is still time to change course. And if there was a change of course, I might feel able to support the motion. Debates such as this are not only a sign that correction is possible, but also a means of catalysing that reform. And one way in which you can contribute to what I believe is an essential change for Scotland and the Scottish people is by joining me in opposing the motion. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the time for our speakers to give their closing remarks. And for this, I have my gavel poised because the limit is 60 seconds each. And Leslie will flag when I need to bang this. So, in the same order as we heard the initial proposers and against, we will begin with Simon Harrison. Simon.
Thank you. We've heard some very interesting arguments on both sides, and I think one thing we have uncovered is that the future is uncertain. We don't know what the right answers are in this area, and there's a lot of development work across the piece if we're going to move towards to move and achieve decarbonisation. So what you want for an energy industry that is the envy of the world is diversity of option. And that's what we have in Scotland. We can address oil and gas, we can address CCS, we can address nuclear, we can address smart grids, we can address renewables, and we can address energy conservation and efficiency, although perhaps that's the slightly less strong suit. So this is about using the connectivity that we have in Scotland and that diversity to build a strategy that is robust. And we will have an energy industry, that's the envy of the world here, because we have all the right ingredients and we have that set of options. It's not just picking one technology. So I would urge you to vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sue.
Thank you. It's a great pity that the motion isn't Scottish energy sector could be the envy of the world rather than will be the envy of the world, because it might have a chance then. But it would require acceptance of much higher prices for electricity, very tight alignment of policy between Holyrood and Westminster, a long-term national and UK-wide plan for investment in a basket of technologies, recognising that some of them will be seriously expensive, much more expensive than others, but that doesn't mean to say it's wrong to invest in them. And market instruments to really give investors long-term confidence, not just short-term grants and subsidies. But sadly, it's politics, so I don't think it would happen. So I urge you to vote against the motion.
Thank you, Sue. Stuart?
We've heard arguments that the future is expensive, we should just stay doing what we know how to do best. What we know how to do best is burn fossil fuels and tip our rubbish into our neighbour's next door yard. That's not a good way to behave. I don't take my rubbish out of my wheelie bin and put it in my next door neighbour's wheelie bin. If we want to behave morally and socially responsibly, having invented the Industrial Revolution, it's up to us to clean up the Industrial Revolution. We've heard how Scotland is well connected. We have many options. We are robust, resilient. We are actually now on the path to developing this envious energy economy. There are many jobs being created. We are not bankrupted by our electricity prices. We will get cheaper heat. We will get more sustainable transport. We're on that path. We can control our own future in Scotland. We can have many sources of diverse and secure supply embedded in a caring and social society. I urge you to vote for the motion.
Thank you, Stuart.
What we call the energy debate, courteously, is in fact a rather cosy duet between government and the energy sector, with the consumer voice almost completely excluded. This is not sustainable. With costs currently proposed, consumer rebellion is all but inevitable. This is not a rosy future, and I'm afraid, really, I cannot urge you to do anything other than oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I didn't get to use the gavel at all. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, now is the moment of truth, and if not truth, clarity. If not clarity, your current prejudice. It's the time to vote. And in front of you, or beside you on the arm of the chair when you came in, if you haven't knocked it down onto the floor, there should be a little mobile electronic device, which I hope you haven't switched off. And we will have a rehearsal first on how to use it, just in case. And I would like to pose a question to you, which is actually a multiple choice answer, just to try out the technology. And the question is, which principal mode of transport did you use to get here tonight? Now that has one answer, because you have to make a choice of what's the principal mode of transport. And could I ask you all to press the appropriate number 1 to 7 that you have options for on your little pad, on your keypad, and enter, press once. Presumably if you press once, you can only press once. Yeah, oh yes. And you can see the numbers that it's working. Yes, a lot of you, 108 of you have now got the hang of it, and it's clicking up there, twicking over. There's still only 2/3 coming up to 3/4. Any more interested in pressing their options? Okay, there are 33 people who don't know how they got here tonight. That's actually quite worrying. Anyway, we'll settle for that. Now, we shall reveal instantly the results of that poll. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? Yes, and the top of the list in our renewable future is people who came here by car, which is not terribly encouraging, Minister, but there you go. So that was just to get used to the button pressing. Now, in the debate itself, it's only a yes-no answer here, so you either support the motion or you don't. So I've got now a yes-no question for us to rehearse. Here you go. Do you think Engelbert Humperdinck will win the Eurovision Song Contest? So you press your yeses and your nos. Okay. Oh, yes, it's not taking very long to get the response here. We'll see. Yeah, still a lot of indecision, but how are we doing? Coming up. Is that about the same number that voted previously? Yeah, well, let's test the technology again. There you go. Poor old Engelbert. Right. Now onto the serious stuff. Those who wish to vote for the motion, that this House believes that Scotland's energy industry will be the envy of the world. And for the avoidance of doubt, that case was argued by Simon and supported by Stuart. You should press number 1 because you agree with the motion. If you disagree with the motion and prefer the strength of the arguments put forward by Sue and John, you would press 2 on your button. Let the voting is well on the way now. Yes, 118, 120. Well, yeah, no. We had 133 who voted on the way that they got here this evening. Okay, no advance on 120?
No, we only had 117 on the who got here.
That's right. Oh, was it? Oh, yes, you're right. It was only 117. So that's about it. I think that must be it. So we have the full set of votes. There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on I knew this would be fun. Yes, I know this would be fun. On the basis of the votes cast, I declare the motion is defeated. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you've enjoyed the evening, and it's been a mix of cut and thrust of incisive debate and a little bit of humour, but a very, very serious issue as well. We may have cast some new light on it. I do hope so. We may have changed some of your views. That's between you and your conscience. But we've certainly demonstrated that we can debate lucidly and discuss freely, and that is perhaps the greatest blessing that we do have in this country. So we're really grateful for that. One final thing, I was conscious that not all of those who wish to put a question had the opportunity to do so. Please feel free to write something down or to email the Academy through the route that you were advised about the meeting this evening, and we'll do our best to capture everything that anybody wants to contribute to the debate, because clearly the debate does go on. Could you also please now, finally, thank, first of all, the Royal Academy of Engineering for having the initiative to mount the debate. Thanks to the Academy. And thanks particularly to our speakers tonight, including the Minister, for their bravura performances. Thank you very much. And you'll be glad to hear, we can now adjourn downstairs for a drinks reception, and you may be able to carry on the debate as you enjoy the hospitality in small groups and with due decorum, of course. So thank you all for being such a lively audience and contributing so well. Thank you very much.
Well done.